Hello, everyone. Welcome. It's Alicia Brashay here from Cosmic Gateway and New Earth Children. I'm super excited to have Kathy once again back with me. So, Kathy from the Blue Butterfly, all the way over in the UK. Kathy, thank you so much for being here. And not only that, I'm super excited about this conversation, but this conversation's been like a few takes in the making because we've gone to do it and then I've had to cancel and reschedule and we are finally here. So I know it's going to be a good one. So settle in, everyone, get your cup of tea or coffee or whatever your beverage of choice is. And Kathy and I are going to talk about, and so Kathy came to me about this topic, and I thought, yeah, brilliant. I really want to talk about this. It's something that I'm also incredibly passionate about. So we're going to be talking about, well, who knows really where we're going to go, but we're going to be talking a lot about children and their own abilities, and the abilities that they come in with that sadly, sort of get conditioned out through society, and how children can have amazing abilities and connections to the unseen, or into different realms, different dimensions. And I thought, there was a part of me that was like, with everything going on right now, why are we discussing this? I mean, this is always important, no doubt. But I was like, how does it tie in, and how is it relevant, besides the fact that hopefully this is going to be really helpful for parents, or caregivers, or children, or siblings, or whoever, to just give a bit more context and support. But I'm just going to share something that came to mind while we were having the pre-record discussion. Thank you, Kathy, for prompting all this. But
okay,
it's the returning to the childhood innocence. So for adults, it's returning to childhood innocence. And I know that a lot of people talk about awakening or ascension process in returning to, childlike, godlike, and I've written, or divine-like. And I think that we can certainly learn so much from these beautiful galactic angelic beings that are already walking here amongst us, and have been, can I just say, and have been for many decades. And I just, no, I'll go into that later, otherwise I'll get on my tangent. But I've had different thought processes come through, over the course of today, and well, not just today, but knowing that we were going to sit down and record this tonight. And one sort of thing that keeps coming up to my mind over and over again is that the term, I'm sorry, I'm looking at my notes because I don't want to mess this up, but the river of oblivion, and I had to look up the definition of that, because I remember one of my beautiful soul brothers, Lockie, if you're watching, hey, I remember him introducing me to this concept, as he does with so many things. And I remember exactly where we were when we were having this discussion. We were out walking. I remember exactly where we were. And he said, the river of oblivion. He's like, these new children come in without going through the river of oblivion. I was like, what what's that?
yeah, what's that?
And so I looked up the definition, because I remember him telling me that perhaps it was, from the Bible or some sort of ancient text that they talk about that, and it probably is. But I've got a definition here, and it's basically a river of mindfulness. So it is where all those who drank from it experience complete forgetfulness. So it's about forgetting it.
That's a lovely expression. I love that.
It really is. So it's obviously drinking from the water that makes you forget, but the image that I got was like a waterfall, right? And you go through it and everything's wiped clean. Not so much a
shower of oblivion.
It's not so much a river, is it? It's a waterfall. But I do have an obsession with waterfalls. So
waterfall power shower of oblivion. Doesn't have the same ring.
Which, if you think about it, right, we're kind of through our own ascension process, awakening, ascension interchangeably, but we're kind of doing that with the programming, aren't we? You know, we're going through, we're going through this. God, I get beautiful metaphors and visions, but it's like we're going back to that childlike state because we're getting rid of all the programming that we've, been subjected to lifetime after lifetime after lifetime, society, all those great things, to come back into our original state. So it's kind of like we need a new term, the waterfall of remembrance. See, now I'm going on my tangent, but anyway, what I did want to say.
Of remembrance. That sounds like I'm sorry, it sounds like a funeral home. Sorry, it sounds all like a garden somewhere where people go to remember. I don't know. That's what I think of a different term.
I think maybe I have to work on that one, but I'm sure everyone gets what I'm trying to say here.
Yes.
So, and I've always had this concept, and I've kind of written about that in some articles, in some newer children articles over the years, are talking about how, when you incarnate into 3D reality, I'm going to say this loosely because I think, when star seeds and light workers started incarnating, it's not always the case. And I think what we're going to talk about tonight, is evidence of this is not the case. But if you want to go back, prior to, the 1900s, let's say, most people when they incarnate, they go through that waterfall of oblivion, or experience the river of oblivion, because all the
WWOOO. Yeah.
So I think what I'm trying to get at is that is part of the functionality of living in a 3D experience. You forget all your soul, you forget who you are on a soul level, you forget all your previous experiences, where you come from, wherever that may be, because you have to come here to learn to remember, and that's what we're all here doing, right? So yes. To get back into why this is so relevant, but I truly believe that more and more, as we're moving out of the 3D reality, that the beings that are coming, I mean, if you just look at the children that have been born in the last 10 years, I mean, you can see perfect evidence of this, that I don't think that's happening anymore. And I don't think it will happen. It's going to happen less and less and less, because these kids that come in, as you're going to tell in examples, come in with their eyes wide open and just ready to rock and roll. Like, I'm here on a mission. This is me. Here I am. Let's get on with it. So anyway, that's kind of my thought piece on it. I'm going to hand it over to you, Kathy, because I know you've got so many beautiful things to share, but I just thought
what I was gonna say, just going on from that, is part of the forgetting and the remembering, and this is like segueing a little bit but not much, is what's going on at the moment, where we've got all this almost cataclysmic and difficult situations. A lot of people are waking up, I think, and my past life memories, etc., are coming through a lot clearer, because we've been around when these civilizations have collapsed before. And I've never thought about this, but I'm thinking perhaps a lot of us have come through at this time, whether it be indigos, rainbows, whatever, to be here at this time. And that's why these children are coming. This is really good stuff. I wish I'd thought of this before. And that's why these children are coming through, because they come with that intelligence.
Yes.
It's almost like an intelligence, like a prior knowledge, and they have to be further along the road a little bit when they come through, so that they're aware. Yeah. And when I say cataclysmic and all the rest of it, and then people get scared about, it's end of world and all that sort of thing, it's not the same. I'm not saying that. I'm saying to put fear into anybody at all. It's not that. It's a change of the world, of one world sort of gradually disappearing and a new way of living becoming, as has been happening since sort of 2012. It's accelerated. And that's what I'm trying to say. And that's why I think maybe, now you've mentioned that, that's a very good point, that people are awakening, so grown-up people are awakening quicker, and babies are coming through with more prior knowledge, and so that they're getting to it quicker and kind of like, yeah, I'm here, I remember all that, let's go and do it again.
Yeah. And I often think of this like kind of building solid foundations, right? Because if anyone's familiar with Dolores Cannon work and her 3 waves of volunteers and a new earth, like I always go back to that book, right? If you haven't read it, like just
remember when you recommended me to read that, and I read it on the way up to see my son last year on a train, and I nearly missed the stop.
Oh, that good, right? Well, yeah, I think the part that got me and still gets me to this day is the foreword or the introduction, the first chapter, where she talks about like where the concept of the 3 waves come from and how they started coming through straight after the Second World War, and that's loosely, that's the first wave, which is my parents' generation, and then you've got the next generation, which is the one that I would sit into age-wise, but it's not exact. It's just I think they overlap a lot, and then
I'm 67. I'm 1967. I was born, so I'm kind of like I'm either on the tail end of the first or I'm the beginning of the second. I'm not quite sure where I am, because I've met people and interacted with people that are very much the first group, and I've also like you resonate with people, and I can resonate with both. So I sometimes think that I was born right at that, but 67 was the major, like,
bridge,
that bridge time.
Yeah,
that's what I think. I'm here, and I've always been told from when I was a child that I can very easily converse with adults and people my own age and younger. It's just the way I am. So yeah, get that, definitely.
Yes. Well, I always get choked up when Dolores Cannon talks about the 3rd wave of the hope of the world, and I just like and it's so true. And I think each wave that has come through, if you want to look at that school of thought in that way, is that they build the foundations for the higher and the higher frequencies, more awake, more alert, more aware. Because you couldn't, like, think about this, right? The children that are coming through now, you couldn't send them through if there wasn't the ones that broke down, the system busters, the stereotypical sort of indigo that is that kind of renegade, spiritual renegade, if you like, of who's going to break and bust systems and get really riled up about stuff. You need to have all those, the people in between, otherwise it just wouldn't work. And
that's why since just after the Second World War, during the Second World War, when the first lot started coming through, and then my lot, and just in between, and then yours, and then we've all done, I think we all have to accept we've done a lot of work, paving the way. We've been through some sort of really difficult, which obviously we were meant to do, and we're all strong enough to do it, but it's to help them. But then they, as kids that are coming through now and teenagers now, are getting to the stage where they're looking around at the world and saying, yeah, this shit isn't right. I'm not having this. And then they look back at sort of the way showers and like their mothers or their aunties or their uncles or people they see like us perhaps, whatever, and say, yeah, they did that. Of course, yeah. So they've done, so now I can move on and do my tough stuff that I've got to do that's not going to be the easiest. Because it's kind of like we're the cheerleaders now.
100%. And you know what, I have so much respect for the way showers who came before me, almost like the forefathers, that our ancestors, and for me in particular, like I look at my father and I have so much respect for that man. I should say both my parents, because in different ways, but I in particular my dad, I say that because he's been talking about the stuff that is happening now that was conspiracy theory for decades. You know,
I
he's,
know you told me that. Yes.
and I just think
Yes.
him and people like him who have known about this stuff and had to wait so long. And you know, and I know how impatient we all are. And you know, some people have just become awake this year and impatient of when's when's everything going to get moving? When can we get to the good bits? And I think these people,
They've
these
been holding the torch, holding the torch.
I have. Sorry, I
And
can't.
they keep this. No, it's fine. It's like they're holding the torch for other people to see. And also, like, you know, people like me that grew up, and many people, especially in that older generation and mine. So I'm like, I said, that crossover. You know, it was very difficult because there wasn't anybody else around that felt. I have met people now that I grew up with, met them again, and we've talked about it. And like, you know, my friend said to me the other day, I stood in the playground with you when I was about 9 or 10, and very strangely, we do look very similar, although we're not related, blonde, blue-eyed, little, same sort of height and everything. And she said, I just knew that we were different, didn't you? And I said, yes, I did. But it wasn't something you'd shout about. Whereas now these kids that are coming through, because they can get online, they can talk to people, they can go up to somebody and say, I feel a bit different. Don't you feel a bit different than them? Do you, you know, have you seen a portal in your bedroom recently? Yeah, I saw one last night. And then just go off and do a bit of skipping and playing as if it's the most normal thing in the world. And that's exactly where we need to be.
Yeah. Yeah. What a really good intro into the topic tonight, because
Yeah, it was.
you know,
We've had a good chat already, and so much has come through already. That's how we know we need to do these things when the time is right.
yeah, and I think that's such a good point, because even in our own lives, if we look about how normal these conversations are, compared to how they weren't. And I think we should really take our hats off to ourselves in that regard. Everyone, not just us, but everyone who's been doing this, because we've accelerated in the last few years. I mean, as you mentioned, 2012, but between then and now, like, the world is a vastly different place, where it's becoming more and more normal to talk about, hey, oh, I was going to bed last night and this, Arcturian was there, and it was, whatever, right? It's not, obviously.
I was trying to go to sleep, and in the end, I just sat up and said, will you switch that bloody spaceship off?
I laugh about it because it's so true.
Either come into the room and let's have a conversation, or come to me in my sleep or something when I've gone to sleep, but stop with the humming. It's like having a Hoover outside.
It drives you nuts, doesn't it?
My husband heard it actually one day. Perhaps I shouldn't say this, but he did actually hear it one day. I must say that. Yeah, he didn't know what it was. He said, what was that humming last night? I'm like, because we're in the middle of nowhere.
We're like,
really
oh,
annoying.
It's all right, my friends were just visiting.
No, I said, it was some farm machinery. And he went, it's a long way away. I said, yeah, but it can get loud when the wind's blowing the right way, because that was just the easiest way to say. But
right.
If it comes up again, I will. I was half asleep. It's not the time.
No, not the time.
And I am not the person at this minute. So anyway, we digress.
But also an important point, that you got to pick and choose your timing with certain conversations. And some people are going to get really triggered, and some people are going to have really, really ingrained programs that to say something will spark
it's fear for a lot of people. It's just real fear, and nobody, I'm just naturally quite a caring and compassionate, well, I'm an empath, and I'm a Blu-ray and all that, so I've got no choice, but I'm a caring, compassionate person, so I would never want to frighten anybody. And that's why I like the fact that other people are talking about this sort of stuff that a few years ago I would love to have had normal conversations with, because the more it starts getting dropped in and people start thinking, then the fear starts to disappear. And also they're seeing people like us, talking quite normally about it. And then, for example, they could happen, might go to your local supermarket or something and see one of us, or whatever, or somebody else that's been and think, oh, they look like the average normal person, because we are, and we're not, because we were all special in different ways, and I think normalising it is amazing.
something that I'm the most passionate about, because it needs to be, and it is becoming that, and you can see it more and more. But it's nice when we can have these conversations and put it out there for people to, because I know that my reality, and maybe yours to some extent, Kathy, but I know mine is, not, how do I say it? I had a really good way of saying it the other day. Someone asked me about what I thought about, how awake the world is or whatever. I said, well, my reality is quite a skewed perception of reality, because everyone in my world, pretty much everyone that I interact with, I have these conversations. There's no, I don't have to hold back. I don't have to, but I know that's not the reality for everyone. And that's why I do this work and we do these videos and all that, because I know that some people are quite lonely on this journey, and I know we've all been through that, where we feel isolated and alone and different and weird, and
I'm lucky because after meeting you, through meeting you, I've met other people that like my online soul family, because I can talk to them, so that's ideal. That's great. And most people that live around me, my friends and family, do know most of the stuff. I don't sort of launch it at them, or I don't do the preach. When you first awaken, you want to preach at everybody and make everybody wake up. I did all that stuff, and then I didn't after a while. But I do talk about it, and if people want to know, I will tell them. But there's only a few people sort of around me. It's growing, that I can sit down, like my good friend Kelly, who I do videos with on Blue Butterfly. I saw her yesterday and we had a long conversation, and we did say, a lot of her friends or my friends were like, what? So yeah, I do have people, but yeah, I'm still, I'm kind of like, I'm not surrounded by people that I could talk to about it. And also, there is absolutely no judgment there. I do talk to some people about certain things and some people about other things, and I just know what's in their comfort zone. And I just, if they want to know, I'm happy to talk about it. But yeah, I do get the loneliness, because there are some things that happen that I get very excited about, and I'm like, I want to tell somebody, and I can't. But then I do, because then you'll get a message from me or something, or Joe, or Jen, or all these people that I'm in contact with now, that I can say this happened. But yeah, there is the loneliness of these things happening, or having a question and feeling like you can't be as open as you would like to be, mainly because you don't want to confront other people. They maybe don't want to talk about that, but you do know the ones you can sow the seeds with, and that's part of our thing as well. And it has grown. The more people I've spoken to about it, the more it's opened up, and also the fear that we have, I've had, and I'm sure others have, of, especially as a child, which we'll talk about, of being open about it. That's very real. It's very, very real. So there is a loneliness, but sometimes you do start the conversation and it's nowhere near as scary. They might, even if they laugh, they're just like, what are you talking about? It still opens it up. And then sometimes people come back and they say, that conversation we were having a couple of years ago, and well, I saw, or I experienced XYZ. Can we open that up a bit more? And then that's great.
Yeah. Two things come to mind. First one is, there's a line that I used to use. I haven't used it in a really long time, and it just came back. And I remember when when you get those downloads and you start talking really fast and it's a really important information, and you go right to the person, and they're looking at you and their eyes are kind of like flickering and widening at the same time, and you think, oh yeah, this is activation going on. And I remember I used to say to people, I know that this is a lot of information right now, but I need to share this with you. I know that you're probably not going to understand barely any of it, but believe me, there's a higher aspect of you that fully understands what I'm saying right now, and it's going to take a while, and it's going to process in. And
that's a brilliant way of doing it.
That was when I just didn't have a filter, and I just didn't care, and I was talking very, very, I don't operate that way anymore, but there's a time and place for everything, But the other thing that I wanted to say was, I think in the plight for normalizing it, we're in essence helping to build a greater world for the next generation,
Yeah.
so that the troubles that and challenges that we went through as children or adults is no longer an issue. You know, that's a world that I look to building, is a world where, especially in schools systems and, you know, all that. But I was definitely the strange kid. And I don't think, you know, I always say that school sucked and I never really liked school and all that sort of thing. But at the same time, unless I'm suppressing childhood memories, which is possible, it wasn't that traumatizing. It just kind of sucked. And it wasn't for me. But I never really hid my weirdness or my quirkiness. I was always open about it. But I know that is not, you know, everyone's experience. So, Kathy, did you want to start by sharing? I know you had something that you want to read out, or
Yes. Yeah.
did you want to?
This is yeah, it's Nicky. I'm sure many people have heard of him. Let me just get this information up. Nicky Hamid, and he is, you'll see him on Facebook, and he's got a website, and he's an author. He's wrote quite a lot of books. He's a mentor, I suppose, to sort of like help people with awakening, remembering who they are. This is like his sort of mission statement on his Facebook page. It gives you an idea of what he's all about. I'm passionate about self-empowerment and you finding connectedness to creation and source. I've known since childhood there will come a time for everyone to wake from forgetting who they are. Mm-hmm. The time is at last here and now. So that, you know, that's beautiful in itself. And he just gives of himself so much on Facebook, and, you know, what he writes always makes a lot of sense to me. Anyway, he read something the other day which is about childhood and what happened to him, his experience. And this is how he headed it up: remembering that we never forget for very long. Mandalas and reconnection to childhood. I remembered how, as a child, barely 2 years old, I would see these great mandala-like openings in the fabric of my world. I would move through them effortlessly, be in a dimension that was home. I was so happily involved in that in a toddler's body. I would sit playing for hours, and I did not attempt to walk until I was 2.5. Mm-hmm. Through these mandala portals, I experienced my other dimensional home as a beautiful place that was like ancient Persia, bordering on the shores of a Mediterranean-like sea. I know, I want to go there on holiday. With white marble buildings that were open, circular, pillared, and with lush and comfortable fittings. The skies were vibrant in pastel blues, pinks, and golds. I was adult, and there were my beloved masters, mentors, and friends around and nearby. These were present right through my very early years and gradually merged into my fantasy world of human childhood. It was a seamless transition. As a child, excuse me, I spent much time in my own world, only knew the difference when I was rudely awoken, especially at school, for inattentiveness, laziness, inappropriateness, dumbness, and disobedience. Strict and hostile teachers would shock me back into my body, into reality from my travels. And of course, this would imprint fear and guilt, which eventually needed to be cleared in later life.
How often?
And so I learned to ground myself. Pardon?
I was just saying, how often do we hear these things?
Yeah, it happened to me. And so I learned to ground myself as a young child and up to about 8 years old, and this is very sad, but it does happen, was to rock and head bang. I would rock up against a wall on my pillow at night and bang my head in a regular motion. Not enough that it hurt, but rather as a light-headed jar. I've seen now that actually helped me bringing my being back into my body and come back to earth, rather than being out of touch with the physical present. So that's obviously something he learned himself just to manage. As I grew older, creativity and sport became wonderful ways to express myself, ground into 3D. I'm just going to move on. The experience of travelling through mandala portals continued up until I was 11 and then faded almost completely. They did appear in occasional dreams or nightmares during sleep. And then he goes on to say that he wrote a book, Quantum Self-Healing, The Power of Colouring Mandalas, all about it. And he's put that he knows that this will trigger remembering of many things for many, with or without the Mandela experience. Every one of you had to close an intimate connection to other realities when you were very young, but it's time to remember, in capital letters. And he's just such a lovely guy. So yeah, I just thought that was just perfect to read.
Yeah.
It's, you know, everybody has different experiences, but I thought was a good example.
Yeah, God, just you reading that was bringing back so many memories of me as a really young child, because I had a lot that I just didn't, you know, didn't really think about or fully understand till later in life, until I started having, you know, more, you know, conscious contact with galactic beings. And I look back now and I was like, I had so many out-of-body experiences as a kid. I had this overwhelming feeling that I was being taken out of my window at night, you know, and just layer upon layer upon layer of experiences that you kind of dismiss, or you don't. Well, it's not that you dismiss them, because as a child they're real. You just don't talk about them, or at least I didn't. And it wasn't until, you know, perhaps in the last 5-10 years that I would share them with other people, only to realize that they were having the same experience that I had such a hard time articulating what it was.
That's the thing, the more you talk about it with people, the more it becomes normal before people talk about it, and that's how it grows.
My golly, Kathy.
What?
No, because you were talking before about the humming sound, right? And it was always a sound that triggered off the experience, which was like a ooh. So I know there's two-part things, but I've just gone, oh my goodness, because obviously that sound that you can hear when there's a craft that's hovering above the house, but there's also that sound as you're coming out of body too, you know, and
Yeah.
in a way they're kind of similar. They are different. You can tell the difference if you've had the different experiences, but
Yeah.
I've just gone, oh my goodness, that's just added another layer. I really hope that this conversation is like doing some positive triggering for people to remember, you know. So
That's what it's all about. That's what it's all about. Because I didn't remember. I remember talking to you quite a while ago now and saying to you, I get this starseed thing, but I'm feeling a bit left out because I never see anything and all the rest of it. And then not long after that, I had this memory come back to me. I think I was washing up or something. It wasn't, you know, anything dramatic. Looking out the window.
It's always around water. It's either toilet, shower, or washing dishes.
Yes. Has happened on the toilet again. Yeah, I wasn't going to mention that, but yes. Yeah, so I'm there washing up and I looked out the window and I remembered when I was 7 or 8, I was walking across from where I lived to where my grandmother lived. And as I'm walking across, and this is the first time I'd remember this, so this was only last year, the year before, I saw this craft. I didn't know what it was, but it followed me, and it wasn't very far I had to go. It's like 10-minute walk, but it was this pink long thing, like a cigar shape with like windows in it. And as I moved, it moved, and then I noticed the clouds were moving around it, and it was still doing its thing. It wasn't like going like a plane or something. And I was just looking at it, and I was scared. Yeah. That's probably why I didn't see anything for ages till I got till recently. But I was terrified because I felt like it was a sort of, looking back, it was a choice moment, and it was, they want to take me, I don't want to go. And I remember running to my grandmother's and looking out the window, and I was out of breath, and her going, what you, and I didn't tell her. I just kept looking out the window, and I did see it for a minute, and then in a second it was just gone. But I'd forgotten all about that. I never told anybody about it, and I don't think after it happened I kind of remembered it, because I think it was a choice that I made. And maybe if I'd gone, maybe I should have bloody gone. I would have had a great time. What a silly
right?
But anyway, yes.
I think the fear factor is you know, really prevalent, because it, you know, when we have come into this incarnation and we go through societal norms and conditioning, to have a spacecraft follow you in cloud formation and having that internal knowing that maybe they want to take you somewhere is terrifying to the
A
human.
little girl
Yeah.
of like 7 or 8. Yeah.
Yeah. Especially with all the conditioning around Hollywood movies and making everyone terrified of other, extraterrestrial beings. But I always say that when you start to after your first one or two, you become more comfortable with it, and if you can work through your fear filters around that, it can make it a much more easier adjustment period. But I don't know if you would agree with me with this. I've noticed a pattern. It was my own journey, and I've seen it in other people, and everyone's different, but I sort of see like being introduced into like the world of spiritual sort of psychic stuff, and then spirit guide concepts, and then perhaps ascended masters,
Yes.
archangels, angels, archangels, and then it's kind of like you become more comfortable, and then boom, galactics. It's talking about laying down foundations. I certainly know that when all my experiences started happening, my first reaction was, but this is not my reality. Like this is and I was naming people in my life. I'm like, that's their thing. This is not, I deal with spirits and spirit guides and people who have crossed over, but this.
Like, who the hell are you? Yeah. Yeah.
And I laugh about that now because you know what? It feels like a lifetime ago, right? How familiar and how comfortable you become
Yes.
in a short space of time. I mean, it's what, 5-6 years now since all that began with me, but like it just feels, it's so natural now, and I think
And
that's
for me, it's not. It's only been the galactic side of things for me, and remembering that I'm 53, has only been the last year, less than a year. And
wow.
yeah, when it first started, it was, what the hell is, first of all, I said to you, it's a shame that I don't know what these people are talking about. Yeah, and then the first thing for me was when I was up one night, I couldn't sleep, and I was trying to work out the starseed thing. I don't know if you remember. And then I suddenly started reading about angels, and I read that, and I thought, and I was still in that ego-based thing, so it's well over a year ago, and I thought, I can't be an angel. How can I be an angel? But then, and I thought, if I can be then I can't. There can't be any. If it's angelic in me, there can't be starseed as well. And then I started opening it, and of course, yes,
Right.
I get all that now. And then after that, that was like the opener. And then after that, that was when I started getting these dreams and visions. And then I heard spaceships outside. I didn't know what it was. It was just humming noise, like somebody vacuuming. That's what it was like.
Yeah.
And then I realized what it was, because I felt like I was being watched in the room.
Yeah.
And then the lights. And then fast forward to like a couple of months ago, I wake up in my body, that thing, and I realized that a few seconds before, I'm stood out my back door, and I was waving off a spaceship that you were in, because we've been off doing something. I mean, people that know me now, I can't believe I'm saying that, because they'll be going, what is she going on? People that don't know, but I've got to open this up, because that is what happened. And yeah, I wasn't stood outside because I was back in my bed, but I know I just had been, and my feet were freezing, like I'd been stood outside, absolutely freezing cold. And the house was warm, I was warm all over, and the bed was a mess. That often happens as well. So yeah, so that was there's loads of other stuff that's happened, but when it starts happening, and that was the first thing, was remembering that instance when I saw that spaceship when I was a kid, and then it went on from there.
It kind of and you're beautiful living proof of what I just said. Like, it's been less than a year, and look at, I can tell you, in a year I was still not okay. I was still not okay with a lot of things, and I just think it's beautiful to see how people like yourself have really just embraced it. And
that's because of people like you. That's because of people like you normalising it a few years before. It's only a few years, but because everything is happening so fast now, everybody is waking up, and the acceleration of it is so fast. Then
really
when we do, I think we just progress, because we kind of, it's almost like, yeah, you got to remember this now. Come on, get on with it. Get on with this, and then we'll move on to the next bit. You know, because we need to.
Yeah,
but they won't do it unless you're ready. You know,
yes.
you've got to be ready.
And also,
otherwise, it would just spoil your brain.
I want to come back to that point. I think that's an important point, because I think a lot of people get stuck on that. Is that whole, well, I resonate of being an angelic, so I can't be a galactic, or because I struggled with that, and I think I shared that with you, because I remember reading a Doreen Virtue book years ago, right? And she had these categories of I think it was basically angelics, wise souls, like ancient ones, elemental type, people, and
you read it and you picked yourself out of whichever category.
People, and I kind of went, oh well, if I read the description, I'm a wise one, and I think because I've had so many memory recall of having lifetimes on Earth, right? And that's where I got really confused, because I would consider myself, quite well adjusted to being on Earth, because I've had so many rotations down here. Why? I don't know. I mean,
me too. Yeah.
But then I remember I came across Dolores Cannon's work, and it just resonated so deep within my soul. And I was like, but if I'm a star, that can't be right, because, I know that I've been here before. And then obviously the more we start to uncover and, break down these, rigid structures.
Labels, really, aren't they? They're labels.
Things
and labels don't work.
Yeah, and you know what? They served a purpose for it. But then I realized we are basically, if you want to look at the very vast picture from my perspective anyway, we all come from a genetic mix of galactic beings that seeded the planet however many years ago, but we all have different resonance. I think what I'm trying to get at is we have different resonance to different aspects, and I see it as that we're multidimensional, which means that we have a human aspect, we have an angelic aspect, we have a galactic aspect. We can have so many, we've got our higher self. There's so many different facets of us that are.
I always say to people, when people say to me, how can you be all these other people? And I said, well, look at your physical DNA ancestry.
Right.
I mean, I know I can trace my family back to King Harold of Denmark, one of the Vikings, all right? But I can also, I've got Romany Gypsy in me, which is as far away removed from that as possible, from, all round. I don't know where exactly, because I've never done that profiling thing, but I've got loads of different DNA in me from different, but it still makes me, so it's exactly the same, isn't it?
I love that. That's a great analogy.
Yeah, that's what I say to people, and then people go, oh yeah.
I love it when we can just break it down and make it really simple, because I think sometimes it gets too complex, and we just got to make it simple. So.
It did for me. Sometimes I'd start reading stuff and I'd be like, what is that? I don't even understand that. And so I think you need to also go for what resonates, like you said, what resonates with you. One thing is, somebody gave me a book once and I've still got it up on the shelf there. I've never read it. I started reading it and I was like, no, that's not, it doesn't resonate. It resonates with her, it doesn't resonate with me, and that's all different. I tell you what I was gonna talk about, actually, was children. When you're very little, we were talking about, before we did this, about the invisible friends and imaginary friends and all that sort of stuff. Well, another thing that I remembered, and I didn't remember until about, this was actually before what I would say my full-on awakening, probably about 4 or 5 years ago. I was actually writing something up, typing something up about my family history, about my granddad. And I just remembered, this has just popped into my head again. I just remembered that there was this this lady that used to be outside in the garden, and my granddad died when I was 8, and I was extremely close to him. You know, he was like he's one of my guys, and he was then, he is now. You know, it's just like there was just a real resonance with us. And I used to go out in the garden with him and play in the greenhouse potting shed thing, and he used to make stories up about a little mouse that lived in a plant pot, you know, all that sort of stuff that you do with kids. So I was about 4 or 5 at this stage, and younger probably. But this lady used to turn up, and if I look back, I don't remember. As a child, you don't think about these things. She didn't have a body. It never worried me, but she had the most beautiful face, but it wasn't even a face, it was almost like a glow. And she used to turn up, and I'd talk to her and she talked to me, but I don't think we spoke. I don't think we ever spoke. And yes, telepathy, and I didn't even think about that, but she used to turn up. And so if I was out in the garden and my granddad was doing something else, he was busy, obviously couldn't keep playing with me all the time, and I'd be off doing something else, because I used to look after me because my mum was working, because she was a single parent, so I'd be in the garden doing something else, or in the house or whatever. And this lady would turn up. It was almost like she took over. Like, you know, he was busy doing something. He knew I was safe, but I was very curious. I was very interested in everything. I was quite intelligent as a child. I did everything a bit quicker than everybody else and all that sort of stuff. I think she was like keeping me occupied, but she'd talk to me and tell me stuff, and I don't remember any of it. Obviously, it's all in here, and that's why when I read something or look at something, I'd resonate. But I remember saying to my granddad one day, I just said to him, "Where's that lady gone?" And he said, "What lady?" And I said, "Well, there's this lady that she turns up, and then she talks to me, and I remember him just looking at me like, okay." And from that minute, I never saw her again. He wasn't nasty about it. It was just, she was gone. But I don't know if it was a spirit, if it was a galactic, if it was I don't know if one of the Ascension, I don't know who it was. It doesn't matter, to be honest. That sort of thing doesn't bother me who it was. It doesn't matter. But I do remember it very clearly. And she was, I suppose, kind of like an imaginary friend. But what I was going to say was, you know, to normalise it as well, is that for people not to be scared when the children have imaginary friends, but to like almost talk to them more about it.
Ask questions.
Because I just shut down, and my granddad was a lovely man. He didn't mean anything, but I thought everybody could see this lady. I thought she was just wandering around our house, you know. And then when he said that, I was like, oh, it's not right. I shouldn't do that. If I'd said that to him as a little kid, and he probably would have been the kind of guy that would have said, of course you can still see her, you know, it's not a problem. But I just felt I want to be like everybody else by that stage of 4 or 5. You know, I don't want to not fit in, I guess. So what I was going to say was to normalise when kids see these things, like whether it be a spaceship or whether it's an invisible friend to them, you know, because I know kids that the parents will lovingly set up a place at the table, and I think that's wonderful for somebody they can't see, you know, so they can sit there together and you know, and they'll talk about it, and that's how it needs to be. Because otherwise, I have known people whose kids have had experiences, and they end up bedwetting and all that sort of stuff, you know, because they feel uncomfortable and they feel like there's something wrong with them. And I just think normalizing it and making them feel comfortable, even if parents don't really get it, it doesn't really matter, because the whole essence to me of being a parent is, yes, you have to sometimes use discipline, etc., but is being supportive and explaining things to however their mind is, their little minds grow at different stages, what's going on. You don't even have to get into detail. It's just like, it's fine. And then, you know, reincarnation in kids, when they start talking about their past lives, you know, that my son, I did check with him a few weeks ago, if it ever comes up, can we mention it? And he said yes. So my son David, name check, he said to me when he was little that he had another life. And it's funny because I'd completely forgotten. It was in Guernsey, this other life. we actually went to Guernsey for a little while because his dad was working over there, and I live in the UK, so it's not that far away, but it's far enough, you know, so it's in between the UK and France.
Okay.
And we went over there when he was little, and he was about a year old, and we were there for about 6 weeks. And he had night terrors when he was a child. His night terrors began when we were in Guernsey, and I only recently remembered that. They stopped again by the time he was about 5 or 6. But yeah, he started having night terrors there. Now, as soon as he could talk, because he was 1 then, so when he was 2, he used to talk to me. It just came up. We were sitting there with my cousin watching something on telly at her house, and he just pointed at something to do with Guernsey. And I said, well, we went to Guernsey when you were little, and he didn't remember it at all. And he said, I don't remember that. So he was about 2 or 3 at this stage. He said, but I used to live in that place. It was a picture of the harbour in Guernsey. And he said, I lived there with a lady called, and he looked at me and he went, when are we going to go and see them? And I said, see who? And he said, when are we going to go and see Sarah in Guernsey and the grey cat? Why don't we see them now? It was almost like, Mum, you're not doing your job. I want to go and see these people with this cat. And I said, well, and I was young when I had dogs. I was only 22, 23. So I'm just sat there watching this program. He's playing with his Lego on the floor, and suddenly this comes up. And I'm like, we'll have to think about that. Looking at Sharon, my cousin, going, okay. She was fascinated. So we did ask him a couple, but then he was just bored with it. It was like, I've said what I need to say. I'm moving on, playing with my Lego. He's like, I don't want to talk about it anymore. And then he mentioned it a few times more. But it was funny because he was sitting on the floor playing, and it came on the telly, this scene. And you know, like, say if you've been on holiday or something, you'll see it and you go, oh, I've been there. And it was just like that. Oh, I've been there. When do we go back there? He carried on playing and building his little house or whatever he was building. And it was so full on. And then when I mentioned it to him, say a year or so, no, probably by the time he was about 5 or 6, it came up. And I even remember what he was doing, actually. We had a cat, and it was his first cat of his own, Rufus, and he was feeding him. So he would have been about 5. And I said to him, do you remember when we used to talk about the grey cat from Guernsey? And he just looked up at me completely blank and went, no. And I knew it had gone. It wasn't even gradual, it was just like gone.
Yeah.
He doesn't remember it now, I don't think, from what he said. He said, I don't really remember having the conversations, but he doesn't have that memory.
Yeah. And I think that is so, it's very normal for children to come in with their past life memories intact, because let's face it, they're so close to the other side, they're so fresh into this world, that more of the other world is more with them, you know, or closer, more closely connected to them. And I've always heard it's roughly around the age of 5 or 7 where it's like switches off. And I wonder if that's has something to do with, you know, one of the theories and concepts about how the energy bodies and the chakra system develop in child up until the age of 7. You know, it takes 7 years for them to fully grow into their full energetic essence, if you will. I wonder if it's got, you know, that sort of comes into my mind, because in some school of thought they say that the energy, that the child is still within the mother's energy field up until the age of 7. They're not an independent.
That makes sense. Yeah.
They're not independent being, energetically speaking, until the age of 7. And I always find that interesting, like 7 chakras, you know, I've never really, you know, looked.
It's always 7, isn't it?
Always 7. I'm sure that there's so many reasons for that, but and I wonder whether it has something to do with that energetic process of them becoming more independent, that then switches off the memories. I'd love to look into an energy field. You know what? I have done more recently, more children's sessions. And can I just tell you the amazing stuff that I learned through these sessions? I'm like, wow. Oh, well, that makes sense. Oh, you know, like, it's just, there's some phenomenal.
Because they see everything so simply. They don't question it. And I heard this term the other day, and I don't know if I wrote the lady's name down. I don't think I did. Hayley Reese, I think she was called. I just happened to come across her video. Don't know anything about her. But anyway, she was talking about how animals and children can see spirit a lot easier than us. And one of the terms she used was spiritual ego, which makes so much sense, because when children are tiny, they don't have an ego. This is just like, that's why they stamp their feet and shout when they're annoyed and pissed off, because I want that now. Oh, I don't want to go to bed, actually. I would like my milk, You are annoying me. You're not having my toy. Oh, I love you. You're really nice. I want to squeeze that dog or that cat till it can't breathe. They just do, because they're full of affection and they just want to hug everything and they don't want to do that. Spiritual ego means that you get to that stage where you're driven by questioning, and you're driven by expectations, and you're driven by the fact that no, that can't possibly be, because that's what it becomes. Whereas when you have no ego, spiritual or otherwise, what is what is.
Yeah
Pure,
childlike,
pure perception.
Divine light, godlike, childlike. Oh my
goodness. It's pure perception of, without any judgment.
Fascinating conversation. But I want to, you've triggered something in me when you were sharing that story about you as a child. That's why I was writing it down, because all of a sudden I was like, oh my goodness. So I'm going to divert a little bit. I'm going to go in a little bit of a spiral, but there is a story that runs and is so prevalent throughout my whole family, and throughout my whole family is a lot of, psychics and healers and, whatnot. But I do believe that this story, this is coming off the top of my head, so I do believe this story is my grandfather, my dad's dad, and him as a little child had this friend that he used to go and play with down at the river, this little boy. And so every day he would see him and go run and play and blah, 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 right? Until one day he got questioned as to where he was going and what he was doing. And he just very childlike said, well, I'm playing with the kid. Da, da, da. Oh, no, I think that's right. Sorry, he wasn't playing with him. He was chasing him. And he would see him and then he would run and chase after because he wanted to play with him. But he was quite he could never catch him or catch up with him. And so the conversation came amongst adults, and they were like, well, which child and which boy, and trying to work it out. And as it turned out, they found out that the neighbor's son had drowned at that lake, at that river. And the description that my grandfather gave was that boy. And so obviously he's, there was a part of him still wandering around there. And so that was quite, shocking or whatever it is, that he thought it was literally a physical other child that he wanted to play with. And then found out that, he was in spirit. But to my grandfather, he was just as physical, as any other child.
And in essence, he is.
Yes.
He is. That's what we do. It's like, I can't touch it or feel it. It doesn't look like the reality of people or solid beings that are being and doing as I know them to be. So that can't possibly be. And as soon as you start doing that I can't possibly be thing, that's when you're using this, I suppose, spiritual ego or ego as such, or the fact that you've been, I wrote this down, I'm just going to have a look, taught to rationalise. Yeah, your brain is taught to rationalise from when you're very young. Yeah. And we all do it, and we all, like to see the logic in things. But once you actually lose that, it's like a fight, it's like you're fighting it constantly. Once you relax and soften into it, then that's when everything opens up and it all becomes normal and natural. And also fear, because if something turns up, and when you're a child you accept everything, that same spirit or whatever turned up, say when you were 12 and you were terrified, the last thing they want to do is frighten you. You know, it's not supposed to be a scary thing. So if they're frightening you, they'll step back.
Yeah.
And so that thing you see, when you see that people say, oh, I just saw something out the corner of my eye and I felt my eye and I felt a bit, so I never saw it again. Well, you wouldn't, because you're scared. They don't want to scare you. They don't want people to be going all the time, like you see on those like ghost films, you know, screaming their heads off. What's that actually? It's gonna, to be honest, to use my French, it's gonna piss the spirit off. It's like, I don't need that. And then you're gonna be scared. So makes sense that children who don't have this fear and this conditioning would just accept it.
Yeah, they have that natural ability, because it just, oh, excuse me. Oh my goodness.
No, it's fine.
It just is. And I think that, you know, I guess getting onto the topic before we round up is just how close and how closer the physical and the non-physical world are becoming, the more we open up and accept it. So whether it be, you know, guides or galactic beings, or, you know, spirits, angelics, or whether it's people who have passed on, you know, and I know that that's quite a prevalent topic. And you know, I've lost very dear loved ones over the last couple of years, and I know that, you know, things like suicide, especially this year, and
gone through the roof, unfortunately. The figures are bad.
And I think it's like, obviously there is a human process that we have to go through, right? You know, we have to go through the grieving process, but quite often I see it as one of those catalysts that helps us remember and awaken, and it's those loved ones who ascend just in a different way, and they go, you know, over the rainbow bridge, which is the nice way of putting it. They, you know, they return back home, because we're all going home, just at different times and in different ways. I at least it's been my experience, and I've seen it, that when people do cross over, especially if they're really close to us, when we can heal from that, or during it, sometimes even during the healing process, it's the connection of them that takes out the fear element of us being able to connect in with the non-physical, right? Because we're familiar with them. We know them. It's not like, you know, an Amazon warrior rocking up in your bedroom at night. That's going to terrify you, right? That's going to scare them.
That sounds quite nice, actually. Depends what he looks like.
Well, depends what you're into, you know. But you know, if it's that, or it's, you know, a loved one that you know in and out, of course you're going to really open up to that experience, aren't you? Whether it's in waking moments or whether it's in dream space, there's so many ways that they can come and connect and share with us.
And you're going to welcome it. You're going to welcome it, because it's trust. You know, you knew that person, and you know their qualities, you know their resonance, and that's why people say sometimes, I can just feel them. You know, I've lost animals and I still get, you know, I can just feel them. I know when they're there, and it's not, it's just that the fact is that we're a soul, you know, whatever body we're in and whichever dimension we happen to just be in at that time, we're still that resonance and that soul, and that almost indefinable essence, that quality, that is the being of, that is us. Once you sense that with somebody that's passed, you just know. You don't question it, because why would you? You know that person so well. It's like when you love somebody, you know, they can be in a different country or different planet or whatever, and you can still feel. So why wouldn't you feel them when they've just passed over a veil into another? It's their way of being around you and comforting you, knowing that, you know, that you need comfort, and obviously they want to kind of, suppose, let you know that they're okay.
It's it can be such a delicate topic, of course, depending on where people are, but you know,
so much emotion involved, so much hard, you know, loss of any kind, you know, is very, very hard. So yeah, of course.
But I think when you can see it from that pure soul essence perspective, the beauty of it, and sometimes I have the privilege of witnessing that in my work, and I'm sure you do a lot of that too, Kathy, where you can see how much love there is, and how it was almost written, well, it was, you know, written into the soul contract that that was their gift of love to leave the
Yeah.
physical to help you in your process to become the best version of you. Um, and you do, I see that over and over. And there's been a few interviews and videos that have come out over the last several years that I've seen that have a very similar theme to it, and I always pick my ear up and I listen to it. It's always kind of been the same. It's been people who've lost children, or loved ones who are you know, younger than them children, and they've come and contacted them through various means, but often through dream space or whatever, and they've basically said to their parents or whoever they're contacting, it's okay, I'm not dead. I've just gone into the fifth dimension, like new earth, and I'm helping to prepare to receive and help this transition period. But I can do more over there than I could have done in the physical. And
Yeah.
oh my God, when I hear those stories, the tears. Maybe maybe that's what I need to go and watch, Kathy. Not, you know.
Yes. Go and watch something like that. Have a good old cry. You'll sleep really well.
But I mean, each individual journey is unique, but that's just sort of popped into my mind.
I think as well, I've watched and read and actually met people that have been through similar experiences. And the other beautiful thing about it is that whatever, you know, mental, physical, whatever was going on at the time when they were either in a dark place, either physically or mentally, you know, very, very ill physically or whatever, when they actually connect, they're bright. There is a brightness, but you're like, yeah, this is the whole essence of me. I'm not in that place anymore. This is just like, you know, I'm me, you know, and I have all the bright essence of me. So the shade that was there, the darkness that you remember, oh, that's making you a bit emotional actually, that you remember, is not me. So they kind of come back as well to say, look, yeah, I'm good now. I'm really sad. You're so sad. I'm sad. You're so sad. You know, but it's okay.
Yeah.
Because I'm okay.
Yeah. And the gifts that can be given, like two people that I've lost who very very dear to me was my grandmother and my auntie. So you know, it was always called like the three P's in the pod. I'm very similar to them in many ways, and it's absolutely no surprise. Oh, I'm going to get emotional now. It's absolutely no surprise that after they both passed, funnily enough, I was not there when I was not in the country when both of them passed, and I know that that was meant to be in that way, you know, because I'm not a big fan of funerals. I'm not a big fan of the whole how we view death. And I always find if I'm not at a funeral, people have different opinions about this, but for me, there's such sadness that happens at a funeral. It's not a celebration of life. And for me, because I didn't have to witness all the sorrow and the grieving of everyone in, you know, together, it's like, well, for me, they live so much more prominent in my heart. It's like I didn't have that experience, therefore, not that it's not real. I know that they're not, you know, physically here, but it's kept them much more alive in my world. And you know what? After both of them passed, because one, there was a couple of years in between that, but that was when I really started focusing on my energy work. And absolutely no surprise, because every time I went into a session and I would start and I'd open up and do all my thing, I literally would see this golden portal open at the top of the room, and this golden beautiful light would open up and it would sort of shine in, and there I could see my auntie and my grandma just beaming this massive smile and laughing and giggling like they're just, you know, like they were, you know. full of life and humor
and saying as well that, look, just we're here, we're just
yeah,
through a
not only
window.
were they saying that, but they were, in a way, they were creating a bridge for me to then do that work, because once that
Yeah,
portal opened, they came through, and I at first I would cry because the energy of the love was so overwhelming.
I can imagine.
Then I would laugh because they would be talking in my ear and saying the most outrageous things, as they normally would. But also it was like they opened that portal, because whoever I was working on at that time, if there needed to be a connection made during the session, whether it be a healing guide or a loved one or whatever, they could come through that portal. You see what I mean? And so that was
Yes,
the gift that they gave me. I
like
mean,
they opened a gate for them, and they're
yeah,
showing them through. Like,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. It was, yeah, beautiful. I haven't thought about that in a long time, because it doesn't happen so much anymore. And basically not, or only if I do it on family members will that experience occur. But yeah, so I guess
there's
why we're
just
having
one
this
thing
conversation,
I just
someone
wanted
has,
to say just before we finish, because I know we've
yeah,
got to close up soon, about somebody. This is just an amazing story, and if I don't know if anybody else has, it didn't happen to me. This is a client told me about this, but when she was born, she remembers being born, and I've heard about this, but I've never spoken to her,
yes,
but she does remember it very clearly, and she's got a fantastic sense of humor anyway. But she said she was like, she was born, she remembers coming out and it being a shock, and it being like into light here,
yeah,
and that was a big jolt. She didn't like that very much. And then she said she remembers the doctors and the nurses and all that, and it was all quite shocking. And then thinking, like, almost like, oh shit, I know why I'm here. Oh no, here we go, but I've got to do it. And then nothing until she was about, I think she said 5 or 6. But she remembers that so clearly, and she's never forgotten that memory. It's not something that she forgot and then remembered later on, as she's in her process at the moment. She's a wonderful lady I work with very regularly, and she's doing amazingly now. But she's been through some tough times. But she, yeah, she remembered that all the way through. And I wonder if that was because no matter how tough things got, it was almost like she knew that she was
yeah,
here for a purpose.
yeah,
Maybe that was a gift that was given to her. I don't know, but I thought when she told me that, I was like, wow.
I love that. I love that. That's incredibly beautiful, and I'm sure she's not alone in that. I'm sure that there are other people that do remember that
Yeah,
coming in. And hello, hello, Earth, back here again.
I know,
Woohoo.
I mean, birth itself is such a, traumatic experience when we're born. It's got to be, I'm quite glad I don't remember mine, because my mum was in labour, bless her, for 3 days. And I was 3 weeks late. I just did not, they tried everything. I wasn't coming. I obviously knew what was going to happen. But yeah, and it's pretty brutal, I think, bless her. So yeah, I'm pretty pleased I don't remember mine, but and I'm sure most people think like that, but there are some people that do, and I think if they if they do remember it, it's part of the gift of what they need to get them through.
Yeah, I think there's a book that comes to mind, and I may have got the title. I think it's called Cosmic Cradle. And it's a whole. I haven't read it myself, but it's just popped into my head. I know of it, but I think it's a collection of stories of people's remembrance, basically. Before, birth, in the womb, all that sort of stuff. So that might be something to look up if people are interested in.
I'm definitely going to.
Yes, I think they've done amazing work. If you look them up on social media or on a website, and you can look at, I think there's more than one book, but that could be a starting point for some
I was
people.
going to say, what we've spoken about today as well is a kind of a starting point, because there's so much stuff. We're so lucky where we are now. We can look at books in physicality, look at books. We can also go online. There's YouTube. I mean, I was looking at stuff yesterday, just reminding myself about videos I think I've watched in the past about children with reincarnation, and so there's so much out there that you might look at and think, wow, yeah, I get that, you know, and read about it and do your own research. I always say to people, do your own
so
research.
important.
Follow the dots. It's like
Yeah.
a join the dots thing with this kind of thing. You'll be led to the next bit and the next bit, as long as I always say to people, the universe will meet you more than halfway.
Yes.
As long as you make a little bit of effort.
Yeah.
So if you're even watching this video, there's obviously a reason why you're watching it. And if you are sort of inspired to do whatever on the back of what we've said, then, you know, that's obviously meant for you. And if not, that's meant for you too.
Yeah.
It's just the way it is.
Absolutely. Beautiful, wise words to round it off there. Kathy, thank you so much for coming on and having this conversation. We've really gone into some vast territory, and I think it's been really beautiful. So thank you everybody for watching and joining in with us. I hope that you've enjoyed it. And yes, just until next time, just giving everyone immense love, kisses and hugs through this time. And we'll speak to you all soon. So much love. Bye.
Bye.